know what you're thinking. Oh no, another talking head on YouTube with a whiteboard. Well, this may be the first show with a whiteboard and a talking head, but I promise from now on there will be more and more coming that will be much better in the future than just a talking head talking, and a whiteboard. But I wanted to start my show now because it seems like there's so much happening every single day right now in the news. There's so much happening. I keep wanting to get started with this process and this project of starting my video blog, and it's not happening. So I want to get right to it and explain what this video blog is about, what I'm about, and what I want to try to educate the public on. YouTube is the best way to do it right now. I'm going to start my video blog. I've got some other avenues. I'm going to be also posting some blogs as well. But I'm going to start with this right now. Please subscribe to my videos. Favorite them as much as you can. Comment on them whether you like them or not. Let's get the discussion started and let's go from there. Let's go to the whiteboard, Jim. The first thing I want to talk about is the foundation of our country. I want to talk about how the Constitution was constructed. I believe people have been dumbed down, and our students today, even when I went through school, which was many, many years ago, we talked about the Constitution, but we talked about it like it was some old ancient document that really didn't mean that much to us anymore, and that we should really kind of just set it aside, that we are a different kind of society today than we were then. That is not the case, and let me tell you why. The principles and the ideals that the founders founded our country on are the same. Man's basic problem is the same, and man's basic needs are the same. So those things have not changed, and those were the basic things that our founders started this country on. Let's go to the whiteboard, Jim. Found that when you look at a house, you can't see its foundation. All you see is the house that was constructed on that foundation. I would like to use this as an analogy, or as a metaphor, as a picture, if you will, of what I'm about to tell you about how the Constitution was constructed and why we need to get back to understanding what the mindset of the founders had and why they constructed it the way they did. The founders, when they were working on this project of putting together a better government than what they had come from, they understood the policies of the British rule. The church was incorporated into, the church and the government were one, basically. The king was basically the head of the church, and the king was the ruler, and it was this soup mix of an oligarchy and there wasn't any kind of representative government whatsoever. It was this mix of a hierarchy, ruling class of people that you could not penetrate, and there was no way of getting into it unless you were born into it or had some kind of some kind of service to the king that was incredibly rich. So you could not change your status as a commoner unless it was something that the king did. He wouldn't do that unless it was, of course, beneficial to him. So it was very difficult in society to move up or move out of your position because of taxation and all the things that they were doing. They ran your life. It was a totally collective society. Individualism says that a person is born with unalienable rights, God-given, that they are endowed with by their Creator. So this person has rights that are unalienable. They are within this person. They are born with those rights. They are their rights to begin with, and they are recognized as such. They were not given to them by another human being. They were not given to them by a government. They were not given to them by a piece of paper. They were born with those rights. Or in other words, because they have life, they have those rights. They have the right to life, they have the right to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the founders meant for that to be to have property rights. We'll get to that at some point. That's further down the road. That'll be another segment. But the foundation of our country was founded on the idea that an individual had rights, and he was protected with those rights, or he needed to have those rights protected, or he had the right to defend himself to protect those rights from an outside source, government, other people, whatever it was. You were born with unalienable sovereign rights. The word sovereign simply means right to rule. So if you are sovereign as a human being, or as a human, or as a person, whatever you're going to call yourself, as a man or as a woman, you are sovereign, you have rights, and you have the ability to rule within those rights of yours. Okay? We'll get on to that a little bit later. But let's say the founders wanted to pour this foundation. Well, they built this form. The form disappears after the foundation is poured. So they have this form built, and they have it strengthened up, and they have it so that when they pour the cement, it has a chance to harden. They've got all these things that happen. All that stuff, once the foundation is poured, all of those supports, the form, everything, it all comes out, and all you're left with is the foundation itself. Like I said, the footer is down below here that the foundation rests on. The foundation comes up. Once that cement is hardened, it's just left right there with all the rebar and everything in it. There's no sign of any form having been there other than the fact that obviously it's standing up, so something must have held it up while it was drying. So it's kind of that evidence of things unseen type thing. You've got a form that was there. What I want to talk about is what was going on in the founders' minds, the letters that they wrote, and the other statements that they made, speeches, letters, and other documents that were written, or like the Federalist Papers, things that were written around the time of the construction of the Constitution, and what the philosophies behind these men. Now, really, that they based their common viewpoint of what a man is, or what a human being is, they recognized it for something that they were under tyranny in Britain, and they wanted to get away from that, and they saw the total opposite of that as being individualism and freedom. They understood the concept of liberty and freedom for every single human being, sovereign individual. And here is where we run into our problem with the Constitution and why some people look at it differently today. Now Barack Obama, who was a constitutional professor, and I am convinced he was only studying the Constitution so he could figure out how to rip it apart and change it. I'm convinced of that now. It's becoming more and more evident every day. I think we will see, this is only his first year in office, I think we're going to see more and more of a complete and utter disregard for the Constitution and a fundamental transformation of this Constitution from an individualist standpoint to a collectivist standpoint. Now some will call it socialism, you can call it whatever you want, Marxism, socialism. It's collectivism versus individualism. Our president has made the statement that the Constitution is a set of negative liberties, telling the government what it cannot do for us, but it doesn't go far enough in telling the government what it should do for us. Again, I don't want protection by the government. I want protection from the government. The founders got it right. They understood that the Constitution was to limit government. Entitlements are not part of the general welfare that the Constitution speaks of. We'll get on with that later. But there's no such thing as negative liberties. And he says the Constitution is a list of negative liberties. That's an oxymoron. And the moron is the one saying it. There's no such thing. Liberty is liberty. You can't have a negative liberty. We need freedom from government, not freedom imposed by the government, by their definition of what freedom should be. Because we don't live in a democracy, we live in a constitutional republic that is a representative government, not a democracy. We have a democratic process to elect our representatives who then represent us in a representative republic. And let me tell you why individualism is more important. Now we established the rule. If you look at the Constitution, the very beginning of it, you will see that it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident. So they're self-evident. You can see that every person is endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights that can't be taken away. The only way you can take those rights away is through the process of something called due process, or a legal structure that is constitutional. You are judged by your peers. It is held to a certain standard that is a legal standard. It has nothing to do with popular vote or majority rule. And the reason that we don't always get what we want from a representative is because this whole constitutional thing was designed not for the sake of giving us rights or giving us what we want from the government. This Constitution was designed to limit government, to protect us from government, not to have the government protect us and coddle us and take care of us from cradle to the grave. We are now free on a merit-based society to achieve and keep the fruits of our labor. That's what the founders wanted us to do. They wanted us to see that. The potential for that is much greater in a merit-based society where people are free to keep the fruits of their labor and work as hard as they can because it gives them incentive to do so.